Hello, everybody. We are live here. Let me click over here on Instagram, make sure that it feeds over. It takes a minute for it to kick over, so almost, not quite. There it goes. All right, excellent. So let me start, as always, by thanking everybody for being here with us. Whether you're watching this recorded or you're watching this live, I'm always grateful for you for letting me be a part of your day, listening to this conversation. I'm really confident that something that gets said is going to impact at least one person. And so that always excites me every time I have one of these conversations, because there's just so many great stories out there. We were just talking about that right before we hopped on. So sometimes I forget to mention that sometimes I don't notice the comments, or people are saying hi, but we're engaged in the conversation and I don't pause to acknowledge you. Please don't feel that we don't appreciate your comments. We do go back to the social media to try to answer any questions that do pop up there. If there are questions, if they don't, feed over or we don't happen to notice them, but we really do appreciate your interaction and appreciate your time. With that being said, I'm here with Fatima. We are enjoying our beautiful days. I think you're sitting outside. It looks like a beautiful outdoor setting. Either that or you've got some great indoor window light. And why don't you tell everybody who you are and what you do, and then we'll chat.
Hey everyone, my name's Fatima. I'm a mom of 4. We homeschool. We have a tiny little farm, and I'm a holistic health coach, and I love helping highly driven humans who's ready to step away from the conventional medical system and take charge of their health.
Ooh, you've got that down pat. I love it. So simple. I should say the phrasing was simple. What you do obviously has a lot of components to it, but I'm always impressed when people have it down to that clear, succinct message. I got it. I was trying to combine all 3 words into one. So you said you had a little farm. I'm curious, in your mind, what constitutes a small farm?
Well, we just have layers, and I have a dairy cow, and we have 2 2-year-old calves. Well, they're not calves anymore, but that we're raising for meat. I didn't grow any meat birds this year. I wanted to take a break, but yeah, it's just basically for us. We're not trying to sell publicly, but we might share the cow with a neighbor or something like that, just so that we have our own, knowing what is going into our food, basically. Is the goal.
Yeah, I love it. Somebody that I work with, they're an organic regenerative farm. And, one of the things that she likes to say is, know where your food comes from, right? Because a lot of times you read what's on a label, and that's really not giving you the full picture of everything that's in there. So I admire and respect that. Now, in terms of what you do from a health practitioner perspective and how you help people from the holistic and, not a disregard for modern medicine, but an acknowledgement that, like, sometimes you don't need to take a medication. There are some other avenues that you can take. Obviously, that's connected to your desire to have the farm and be able to know where your food came from. What initiated that passion for that in you? Was it a health thing that you went through? Was it just learning and recognizing the importance of it?
Well, I actually went through my struggle with depression and anxiety. So I was taking medications, but it was making me just feel like blah. And I knew that there was something more to life than just, taking the pills. Yeah, I'm not feeling depressed or anxious, but then I don't feel excitement for anything. So I decided to research and got into toxic-free living, which eventually, I cleaned up my lifestyle and I was able to get off the medications. And then I just started living, clean, holistically. And obviously, before I got into farming, I researched a lot about how to grow on living soil, because my husband had a cannabis farm. And I was like, we need to have living soil, all these things. And yeah, that just kind of became my passion project, sort of. I was telling before, I feel like it was kind of, maybe it was fearful for other people when I was talking about the toxins and everything. But I was just like, hey, I was able to heal myself by cleaning up my lifestyle. And I think everyone needs to at least have some knowledge, right? That a lot of the things that they're selling us are not really created not created for our health, because it's for convenience. And a lot of times we forget that when we get sick, we have to somehow look into our lifestyle, right? A lot of people forget that like our lifestyle really affects so much of our health.
Right.
And yeah, so that's just basically kind of like where it all started from, and then it just, progressed to me becoming a health coach. And then the funny story is, real quick, so I'm obsessed with mineral balancing right now, but only because I didn't think I was suffering from any symptoms. I felt I was so healthy because of living toxic free. And then I saw a post about premature gray hair. And that's what like prompted me to like, hey, I want to try to do that test and see if my premature gray hair is in fact from mineral imbalances, right? And then I realized, I was like, oh, you know what? I do have symptoms, but I wasn't feeling it, like it wasn't amplified because
Mm,
my load was kind of already low. And so I was like, no, at first I was mad at my results actually. And I'm like, why is it telling me that I'm still toxic when I've been living clean for a long time?
mm,
You realize we do live in a toxic world. And if we only lived in a bubble, right, that would be
right,
wonderful, but we don't.
right.
But yeah, that's basically kind of like the backstory of how I got into all this.
So when you did the mineral balance test, it showed that you were lacking in the minerals or had too much of the minerals that would impact your hair. Interesting. So
Yes.
I yeah, and as you're talking about it too, like I feel like over the years I was educated well enough, right? Like even as a kid, we had a farm. Well, not a farm. We had a really big garden. My mom had a big garden. My dad as well, but it was really my mom's kind of specialty. And we never used anything on the plants. Everything was natural. We had a compost pile. We would go fishing. So I mean that we were doing some things that were on the healthy, organic, natural, right type of stuff. But we still would eat things that were off of the store shelf that had, processed ingredients, all these different things in it. And then you learn about some of the stuff and you go, okay, I'll take that out of my diet. And you take some of the stuff out. But it's like it's tough because as you said, we live in a world with so much toxic stuff around us. And it is harder than not to try to like remove all those different things. But once it's like you can't unknow. So it's like I'll go to use something or eat something, and I'm just like, oh man, I know what's in this. So I really want to put this in my body. And so it's like you're trying to kind of balance that, not wanting to make yourself, like you said, make yourself scared or run panicked or not be able to kind of enjoy yourself. But at the same time, being really cognizant of the fact that like those things you put into your body impact your ability to feel physically and emotionally good.
Yeah, exactly. And I also, yeah, it's really, so one time we went to Great Wolf Lodge, right, for my kid's birthday. We were eating dinner, and then my husband's friend was asking me because, he knew I was like all these like, I'm the crunchy person. And he's like, how do you not feel stressed when you're eating out? And so I'm like, well, when you know that your foundations are strong, I'm not gonna not enjoy my
Right.
life when I'm out there. I just know and I trust that my body knows how to handle this because I'm not bombarding myself with the processed foods and whatnot, like all the bad things that they say is bad for us. I'm not eating them every single day, right? And
Right.
so it's just really about discernment. And I love how you say when you're reading the ingredients, because sometimes when we do go out and then my husband gets something and I'm reading the ingredients, he goes, just don't read the ingredients.
Yeah. Don't look. Yeah.
Yeah, don't look, just close your eyes. Yeah,
Well, and some of
sometimes.
it. Okay.
Go ahead.
No. Finish what you're saying. I want to hear.
Oh, because sometimes there is no choice. Like if you're driving and you're in the middle of nowhere, you stop at the store, and no matter how hard you try to find something that doesn't have,
Yeah.
the worrisome ingredient, there's nothing. And if you're hungry, it's like, well, my body's hungry. I'm not gonna stress it out by making it go hungry just because I'm like, oh, this ingredient, is bad and whatnot. So I just, kind of like you have to just pray over your food and say,
Balance.
hopefully
Yeah.
it knows.
Right.
Yeah, it's about balance. It's like I mentioned earlier, we don't live in a bubble, and you have to live your life, right?
Right.
It's not about like it's about knowing but not fearing.
I like
Right?
that. Yeah. Yeah, and I mean that's just the general good philosophy for life, right? You've got to know you don't want to run scared. You know, you mentioned kind of praying over your food, right? Put trust in God. You've got to say like, okay, this is bigger than me. But we are given a responsibility to make good choices with how we treat ourselves and how we treat other people. And part of the how we treat ourselves is what we put into our bodies. Some of the stuff it's funny because I feel like, you know, when you don't know when you're a kid, right? And I feel like if my mom had said like, no, you're not going to eat that. I'm sure there were things that she said no to, but like some of the stuff, you know, she let us eat that if she all of a sudden started going like, no, you can't eat that, I'd have been like, well, I don't understand. And now as an adult, I'm like, why was that ever allowed to be put in our food? Like, why did anybody ever think like, let's put this thing that we can use to like take rust off, like, let's put this into your body. So, you know, understanding that like in an industrialized society, that's how things work and people don't necessarily know the long-term effects, and so they find something that works and okay in the immediate there's not a negative consequence, therefore we're going to try it. So that's standard, and I get that, and that a lot of it's trial and error and that we really didn't know what we didn't know. But it is tricky, and I know you've got, you know, got children. You know, I have 3 older children, so mine are at the top spectrum of kids, 19, 17, and 16. So, you know, still under the roof, but older. And I think sometimes it's interesting when I'm talking about some of the stuff that I've learned and I'm continuing to learn. And I can tell that their gears are turning and they're thinking, like, how is this going to impact what we're going to be eating? Right. Like, they're probably thinking, like, what's not going to be coming into the house anymore? But they're also interested, right? They do want to hear it. When I share with them, like, look, ultimately, it's going to be your choice what you do and don't eat. But like, I just want you to be aware of what we know, right? What you do with it at that point. And so I think the same thing, like you don't have to be scared. You don't have to function from a place of panic, but you do want to be aware so that the choices you're making are ones that you're making from an empowered place and not from a place of necessity.
Yes, I love that. I love that. Yeah, because you know how a lot of times people will see that you're very, let's say you're very crunchy, and then they tell you, oh, your kids are going to have an eating disorder or they're going to eat the junk behind your back. Like a lot of people used to tell me that, right? Because especially with my oldest, I was very strict. He never had any sugar until he was almost 3, but it was my husband who bribed him with gummy bears to get in the car seat. They didn't tell me, but I found the gummy bear on the car seat when they came back from visiting his grandpa. And but yeah, and then after that, you know, I became more relaxed. But in the beginning, everyone was telling me that they're like, your kids are they're gonna hide behind your back and eat donuts and all that stuff. But to me, I'm like, well, I am not restricting them from having that. When we go out and they ask if they can have a donut, I let them have a donut. But I also make sure to tell them, like, okay, if you imagine if you're gonna eat this donut every single day, or how many pieces of donut at a time, you're not gonna feel good, right? So they kind of have that
Yeah.
discernment. They know. Even my 5-year-old now, when we go grocery shopping, he'll if he sees something that he likes, he'll say, "Hey, mom, can you read the ingredients for me? Is this good? Is it like, you know, I'm at least, you know, like if they know." And except it's the candy sometimes that is kind of a struggle with for me. But now I've been surrendering more, and I'm like, okay, you can enjoy that, but I hope, like, just know that, you know, it can, you know, make you feel bad if you eat a lot one time at
I
once.
agree.
Because yeah, I do want to give them that opportunity to decide for themselves what feels good for them, what feels good in their body, and not to be scared about, you know, all the dangerous things out there.
Well, yeah, and the cool thing too, which we can do ourselves as adults, right, is you start to kind of like do a self-assessment of how do you feel after some of those things, right? So it's like the elimination diet when you're trying to determine what you're allergic or have a sensitivity or intolerance to. You take a whole bunch of things out, you slowly put things back in, and you kind of listen to your body. So I mean, I'll use as an example. I was not gluten or dairy free. And then I started going through the change and I was having really bad night sweats, was talking to the doctor and she said, you know, to try to go off. Well, I think dairy had actually come prior to that because I was having some reflux issues. But with the gluten, she was like, you know, try going off gluten. And I was thinking, like, I've been eating gluten my whole life. Like, why would that be an issue? But I'm like, okay, I'll try it, right? So of course I try it and I take it back. The night sweats come back. Stop it. They're not as bad. I'm like, dang it, because I really didn't want to give up gluten, because we do live in a very gluten dairy society. And a lot of that has changed. But when you think about it as a party you go to as a kid, it's like pizza and there's cake, ice cream. My son's allergic to peanuts. I remember there would be like peanuts in the middle of the table. So you're like, okay, how am I going to navigate through this when there's all these things that I'm taking out? And that's as an adult. So I think for children, it's even a little bit more difficult. Like I said, my son was allergic. He was allergic to gluten. He was allergic to dairy, allergic to peanuts. So, I mean, for him, it was like, if you eat those things, there's going to be a problem. It's not like there might be a problem. It's like there's going to be a problem. But we do start to notice it. And when you recognize like, oh, I feel better. So the more time that goes by, that like I will on occasion have a little something, because if I'm like I was in Boston recently with my husband and I had half a cannoli, because there's this place that makes cannolis that are like incredible. And I'm like, my system is going to be so upset with me later. And it was a really good cannoli. But to your point, it's knowing that, but like a lot of times I'll have temptation that I have access to, and I don't want it because I'm like, I know that I'm not going to feel good if I eat that. And so, it's the education too with your kids. They're asking you check the ingredients because you've informed them that like this is the impact it's going to have. And ultimately, at some point, they're going to test foods. They're going to find out what does and doesn't make them feel good, what's giving them the best quality of life. And you do make some of those choices like, hey, I get an upset stomach every time I drink orange juice, but I'm going to go ahead and drink it because it's worth it for me. Like that. We do get to independently. I don't. I'm just as an example. But I think it's that information, and it's empowering people to know that you can make those choices, just like with exercise. You can exercise, you're going to feel better if you exercise, or you can not exercise and you're going to not feel as good. It's a choice.
Exactly. It's really about making the choices. And to me, the simplest lifestyle changes, like the most basic, sometimes is the hardest to do, because when someone is already in such a, like, it's their routine, right? It's their habits. It's harder to break. So when you tell someone, hey, if you want to sleep better, stop watching TV or scrolling on your phone 2 hours before bed or something like that. And sometimes that's like the hardest for them to do, even though they know that they're going to suffer and have a hard time going to sleep, because that's just what they're used to. And that's why a lot of people, they tend to go for like, oh, is there something that I can drink to help me sleep, or, something like that, like kind of shortcut. But it's like, if you just change this one thing, then you won't have to use something as a Band-Aid to help you go to sleep, right? And so, yeah, it's really just about educating and helping, to me, especially because my kids are smaller. So it's like helping them see, like what it does to them, right? Like if you go to bed earlier, you won't be tired in the morning, like all these things, it's very simple and very basic, but then it's like the hardest to do.
Yeah, I'm receiving that information from you right now, because I am definitely one of those people that I'll like it's funny because like one of the things, well, I do a whole bunch of growth and change stuff, right? But I do process improvement and I do consistency and habit setting and all those kinds of things, right? So like I'm talking to people about that stuff all the time. I consistently forget to drink enough water. I am like working up until bedtime, even though I'm like, okay, tonight I'm going to shut down and I'm going to sit and I'm going to read for a little bit before bed. And then it's like right at bedtime. And my husband will even be like, it's very funny. He'll like walk by me in the office and be like, I see you're not in bed relaxing right now. And I'm just like, but we do know those things. And you're right. We get us so caught up in the very loud and very hurried pace of our existence. Some of that we can blame on the current culture and society and those things, but some of it comes down to a choice, right? You've got to say to yourself, when I'm taking the 15-minute break during the day, if I sat outside in the quiet, not took an opportunity to catch up on emails on my phone, but just sat on the porch, right? If you kind of make those incremental changes, then you start to remember to drink more water, get yourself to bed on time, get more sleep. I don't sleep well. I've never slept well, even before phones existed. So to some of that's status quo for me, but the phone's not helping, and neither's the computer screen. And so I own that. And every time somebody says it, I'm like, I'm receiving that. I'm like, at some point here, I'm going to like really make the make the change. I've done it. I do it, and then I slip back again, and I'm like, man, I just I don't know, stubborn, but I
Yeah.
think it's really important to keep noting that, because even though those are like the things that we all know we need enough sleep. We all know we shouldn't be staring at the blue light before bedtime. We all know we need enough water. But how many of us just get so wrapped up that we forget
Right.
or
Yeah,
ignore
exactly.
what we know? Right.
Sometimes I have to remind my kids to drink water because they get so
Oh yeah.
busy. Hey, I feel like you haven't drank water all day.
Yeah.
Like, how are
Well, that's
you
it,
doing this?
right? You're like, I'll be like, oh, my head hurts. And my husband's like, one of the first questions, he's like, how much water did you have today? And I'm like, I pick up my glass to kind of feel like how much is in there. And I'm like, not a lot. And I have this gigantic jug we bought me, like this really big thing that we're like, if I put this next to my desk and I tell myself, you've got to finish this every day, you'll get enough water. But I don't. So I think, again, if we really want to feel good, right? If I really want to feel as good as I can, it doesn't mean it's going to ward off every potential ailment and weakness that I could experience. But like, if I want to maximize feeling the best that I can, I do have to do those things. And again, like the working right before bed, like sometimes that cannot be avoided just because of the current status. I've got 3 teenagers, you've got kids, you know what that's like. Your day gets interrupted. You've got to kind of rejigger things around to make sure. And so sometimes you just can't. And, but it should be a priority. And at least there should be a really tight effort to get to that. So.
Well, if you can't avoid it, you can always get yourself the blue light blocking glasses if you don't have it.
I have
Or
them.
yeah, you should wear that. Or they sell now like these screen covers that will block the blue light, and maybe some. I know they banned it. I don't know if they banned it on your side of the country. Here in California, they banned the incandescent light bulbs, so it doesn't have the blue spectrum. So at nighttime, in our bathroom, my lights on the wall are incandescent, so that's the only lights I turn on. And I also have light bulbs that doesn't have the blue spectrum. So it's been helpful. My husband loves to watch TV at night. I don't know how he falls asleep. Because sometimes I'll stay up and watch TV with him just to bond. And then we're laying down in bed, and he's like instantly snoring. And I'm like, I'm laying down here awake because of the TV. And how are you sleeping?
Yeah, well, different people, right? But I mean, I feel like in the past, like I think old TVs didn't have as much blue light. Like I think that has to do with the HD TVs. Because I feel like I used to fall asleep watching the TV when I was a kid, and it didn't have the same effect. I love the idea of the blue light screen. I hadn't thought of that. I don't know why, because I remember in the past seeing them. But because when I wear my blue light glasses and I go on, like if I'm on a Zoom chat, they really reflect the light. So like you don't see my eyes, you just see like this bright reflection.
Yeah.
So if I got the blue light screen, that would avoid that. But I have blue light glasses, and I really try to wear them. I try to wear them whether I'm looking at the computer screen or whether I'm looking at my phone. I have blue light reading glasses because my eyes are starting to get angry, probably from staring at screens all the time.
Yeah. And the beauty about the blue light screen, like blocking screens on your computer, they actually don't change the color of what you're seeing on your screen. So,
oh, really?
Because I know when you're wearing the blue light blocking glasses, it changes it. Or even when you're change my screen on my phone to red, and then you're like, it's so hard to read anything, right? So that one, it doesn't change the colors, so it stays the same, but then you're protected from the blue light. So
yeah, I'm definitely gonna pick that. I'm gonna write it down because I'll forget. Blue light screen. Blue light screen. I love that idea.
I'll send you some links too.
Yeah, I don't know why. It's funny because years ago I remember looking at them, and then I never got one because I got the glasses, and now I take the glasses off a lot of times when I do the calls with people, and I'm like, wait a minute, that's brilliant. I can do the blue light thing. So, were you as a child? Did you grow up? Were people teaching you that some of that stuff as well, or no? It was not. No.
I wasn't the poster child of holistic health at all. So I grew up in the Philippines. It was like a pill for every ill. You have a headache in school, we'd go to the clinic. We're like, I have a headache. They'll give you an analgesic. Period pain. Go to the clinic. I have period pain. Analgesic. I wasn't holistic at all. We use Tide for our laundry, like all the things. It's basically, and I was the first one who made changes in my family. And at first they thought I was crazy. But now, they still kind of do their thing. But then here and there, they ask me for advice, especially when they started having kids. So there's 8 of us. I'm the 4th. But when they started having kids, they're like, hey, I want to make sure that my laundry soap's safe, fine for my kid, or, like all these things. So I'm like, sometimes I want to give them tough love. And I'm like, no, you need to change your whole lifestyle and not just be like, oh, I need lotion for eczema.
Right.
But, I'm just like, no, okay. It's for my nephew or for my niece. Like this is toxic free, but you still need to change your lifestyle. But here it is.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, because it's expensive right now because of just that's the way that our economy is, right? So a lot of the healthier stuff, the products that are healthier for you to put, for whatever area of your life, cleaning, what you wear, what you eat. Hopefully that's going to turn. And I mean, I feel like we're at that right now because there's a lot more people who are getting involved in the creation of those things. There's a lot more people who are involved in the awareness. And so like, okay, that's what I'm going to stand by. So it's going to shift. But it is tough right now, right? You go to the grocery store and what they'll call the healthy food aisle, right, is like the prices are much more expensive, right? Healthy cereal, more expensive. You can eat the stuff with sugar poured all over it all day and all night. But if we take that stuff out, we're going to charge you more money. And I understand that, again, from the economy perspective, this has to do with crop loss and all of the things that take place when you remove those chemicals out and put the good stuff in. But it is ultimately going to save you on your medical bill and improve your quality of life, right? So we don't have any problem with spending extra money on a fancier car, but we don't want to spend extra money on fancier clothing detergent.
Yeah, exactly. And I really try to like avoid like, oh, you change your phone, you upgrade your phone every year or every time iPhone comes up with a new one, but then you find it so hard to spend a few extra dollars to buy the organic produce, or if you want to still feed your kids cereal, try to choose the one with no high fructose corn syrup and artificial coloring. Like I think it's really about the making your priorities, like it's kind of like, this is kind of like a long game, right? You're not gonna expect your health to just like immediately change because you changed everything out. But if you think about it, yeah, right now you're not feeling the ill effects of using, let's say, toxic shampoo or whatever, right? A lot of people will say that I've been using that my whole life, I'm fine, but you don't know what's going on inside your body, and that compounds, and then eventually you're going to get stuck with a huge medical bill instead of investing in your health while you're still well, right? When you're still feeling kind of great, why don't you want to keep it that way instead of kind of abusing your body, and then you get to a point where you're visiting the doctor every week and missing work and all these things, right? To me, health is an investment, and to me, health is your true wealth, because no matter how much money you have and you're not feeling well, you're not able to enjoy life, you're not able to play with your kids and all these things. Like, what's the point, right? What's the point of having all the money, but then you're like sitting there and kind of keeping yourself alive with medication?
Right. Yeah. So I want to kind of go back to your initial, you were talking about your focus has to do with a lot with, you said, I think, I don't remember if you said high performing. Did you use the term high performance or high energy? Right.
Probably achieving people. Okay. So they tend to, yeah, like they want to work, they want to keep pushing themselves basically, but then they know that it's not good for them, right? So, and then there would still be lifestyle changes that need to be done. And other people, though, they still want to keep, let's say some people want to keep working 80 hours a week, and so they'll do certain lifestyle changes but not cutting down the 80 hours a week. So it's like, you're just going to be able to maintain where you are. You're not going to be able to optimize your health. Like, to me, my ultimate goal is to help others have that optimal health, whatever that looks, however it looks for them, because everybody has a different definition of what healthy is for them, right? There's some people who are like, okay, what's important for me is to be able to play with my kids and my grandkids when I get to this age and still be able to get on the floor and then be able to get up with ease and not having to like, oh, I'm stuck on the floor. I can't get up because my knees are like hurting and all these things.
Right.
But yeah.
So that's why that's your, and so maybe I'd love to hear about like a success story where you've been able to kind of see that, because I know that I always love those, like the person comes to you and then they leave you and where they're at. So do you have like a favorite, well, not a favorite, but do you have a success story you want to share?
I have my favorite one is she used to live in our little county and she moved and she came to me. She said, she just had all these symptoms and she wasn't enjoying her life. And she has 3 little kids. And we did a hair test and we found out that she was very depleted. It's called 4 lows. So her major macro minerals were like all like really, really low. And it's called a death pattern. It's not necessarily you're gonna die. It's just kind of like they just call it a death pattern because it's one of the patterns that's very hard to get out of because you're essentially just very, very depleted. And we, she did the lifestyle changes, the targeted supplements, although she did it slowly because she was very sensitive to the supplements. And now, every time we talk and chat, she's just always so thankful because now she's more calm with her kids. She feels more present with her kids. She feels like it's almost like she goes, I don't have anxiety anymore. And when stress comes, she's able to deal with it like more with a more level-headed, like she's more level-headed and she's sleeping better because that's one of her things was she wasn't sleeping great. And her periods have been great too. She said I think like 2 weeks ago, I was like, don't send me a picture of your period. It's fine. It was funny. I'm like, there's no TMI for me, right? So I'm like, yeah, I'm like, that looks normal. That looks great. And then she was telling me a story about how her periods used to be. And so I'm like, well, this is wonderful. This is, that's a great. She was really, really grateful because now she's not suffering from the period pain and the heavy periods and all that stuff. And yeah, so she's like one of my favorites because she was at 4 lows and I was very amazed at her results, even just doing it once, and so I'm obviously I'm like, encouraging her to keep going. And then the more you keep going, it will just keep getting better and better.
Yeah. Well, and how awesome for her to have not even realized that something could be done, right? And now to feel so much better. And like that's, kind of the place that you were in too. Like you just think, okay, well, this is just going to be my normal. And then when you start to make these changes and realize that you can live feeling so much better, that's huge, right? And you don't even know what ailments you might be preventing, right? In addition to the immediate feelings of betterness, there's whatever might be recovering, whatever you might be preventing. So before we end with a final thought for everybody, which can be funny or inspirational, whatever you choose, before we do that, why don't you tell everybody how to get in touch with you if they're like, hey, I want to live toxic free and feel better too, whether they want to follow you on social media, reach out to you, what's the best way for them to get in contact with you?
They can always follow me on Instagram. It's at Fatima Pagtakhan. I have all content about going toxic free with a side of humor because to me, laughter is the best medicine. I also have a free Facebook group. It's called Holistic Healing for Hormone Balance, Graceful Aging, and Gentle Detox. I know it's a mouthful.
Okay. Yeah.
Wow. It's a mouthful. But yeah, and I also have I'm doing a pre-sale for my masterclass called the Nourished and Balanced Woman Masterclass. It's going to be live on July 10th, and they can just, send me a DM on Instagram. I think that's the quickest way to get to me, and we can talk all things holistic living and wherever you are at your health journey.
Awesome. And as I always say to everybody, if you prefer to reach out to me and have me do an introduction, obviously reach out, send me a message, and I will make that introduction so that you can get directly connected. If you didn't hear the social media stuff or you just want the connection. And now let's end with a final thought, like something you want to leave everybody with. And again, this can be inspirational, motivational, informational, funny, whatever strikes you.
So many things, but I would just say to start with a small step towards whatever your goal is. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's progress over perfection.
I love that. Yeah. And that's what you did. And look where you are now, sitting outside with your kids happy. You're happy, making other people feel good. Thank you so much for your time today. I enjoyed this. Your kids cooperated the whole time. I was like,
yeah.
I was hearing that. I'm like, oh, I wonder what they're doing. Cause I remember when my kids were that age and I'm like, are they building right now? Are they playing with a toy? Like, what is that noise that I'm hearing? It wasn't at all distracting to me. It was actually quite nice to hear the sounds of children at play. But I thank you very much. I'm sure that you're going to get some people reaching out to you to find out more information and follow you on social media. So thank you very much for your time today. And of course, thank you to everybody who joined us today, whether you joined us live or you're watching the recording. And then if you'd like to say goodbye to anybody before we close out, by all means, go ahead.
Bye, everyone. Thank you. Thank you.
Take care, everybody.
I had a great time.
Me as well. Thank you. Take care, everyone.